Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Cricket here. It's been a little minute since we dropped a dedicated sports episode, but today we're heading back to the Eastern Gate. We are revisiting the morning after reflections from a night of heavy rain, high stakes, and pure emotion at Adelaide Oval. Here is the deep dive.
Imagine stepping onto a freezing, muddy oval. You know your body is just entirely out of fuel.
Right, running purely on fumes.
Exactly. And you look over at the sidelines, and you have absolutely zero substitutes left on the bench.
Oh man, that's the ultimate nightmare scenario right there.
It really is. Plus, your team hasn't beaten this specific opponent on this ground in 3 long years. And on top of all that, the sky is currently trying to drown you.
Because of course it is.
Right.
Ugh.
Now take all of that and imagine carrying the immense, just crushing grief of losing a family member on top of that absolute physical exhaustion. Today, we're looking at how a human being actually survives that kind of pressure cooker.
Yeah, because it's a scenario that completely breaks the standard models of athletic performance.
Yeah.
Usually we look at sports through a very clinical lens, right? Stats, scoring percentages, tactical formations, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the sterile numbers.
Exactly. But when the environment turns hostile and the body actually starts to fail, all those numbers just get thrown out the window. I mean, you are left with a fundamental question of human endurance.
And we actually have the perfect lens to examine that endurance today. So welcome to this deep dive.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Today, we're pulling our insights from this brilliant, really raw blog post titled The Morning After. It was published over on the 19th Floor blog, which, if you don't know, is a spin-off of author Cricket Fox's Corner Coffee with Cricket Brand.
It's a great piece of writing. Really puts you in the stands.
It absolutely does. And our mission for you today is to unpack a single brutal football match between the Adelaide Crows and the Geelong Cats at the Adelaide Oval. Because on the surface, this reads like a simple sports recap.
Just another game in the rain.
Right, but when you look at the mechanics of what actually happened on that field, it is a masterclass in resilience, the burden of leadership, and how humans function under extreme physical and emotional attrition. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, we have to start with the environment itself. Because the weather in this match, it wasn't just a backdrop. It was an active antagonist. It completely dictated the terms of engagement right from the opening bounce.
Cricket Fox captures that build-up so well in her post. She's packing her bag the night before, right, watching the weather forecast, and she sees this massive rain system rolling in.
The odds were already stacked against the Crows before a single drop of rain fell, though.
Oh, totally. The bookies had heavily tipped the Cats to win, but Cricket wrote that she went with her heart. She tipped her boys. And there is some heavy historical baggage hovering over the stadium, too.
The hoodoo.
Yes. The Crows hadn't beaten Geelong at the Adelaide Oval since round 1 back in 2021.
Which creates a massive psychological hurdle before anyone even laces up their boots.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you are walking into a stadium carrying the institutional weight of past failures against this specific opponent.
It's heavy.
And you have external validation from the odds makers, essentially telling you that your defeat is just a mathematical probability. Add a looming storm to that, and the mental baseline is, well, it's incredibly tense.
But the evening actually starts with this quiet, almost cozy ritual for Cricket.
Oh, yeah, the drop-off.
Yeah, her stepson, Mick, drops her off right in front of the Oval at the Eastern Gate, just like he always does. It's this brilliant little detail because it grounds the massive scale of a stadium game in a very relatable fan experience.
Yeah, you feel like you're right there with her.
And at that moment, it's just a gentle rain. She considers it a blessing, actually, allowing her to get inside the stadium and undercover safely.
The classic calm before the deluge.
Because the heavens absolutely open up in the first quarter. I mean, that gentle rain turned into a torrential downpour, and the match instantly devolved into a scrappy, muddy slog.
Just pure chaos on the grass.
Yeah. The Crows barely survived that first term, heading into the breakup 3.2 to 2.6. But Cricket notes they were largely saved by the Cats' inability to kick straight.
The Cats definitely had the opportunities. They just couldn't convert in the wet.
Right. And this brings up a guiding philosophy for the entire match, rooted in a quote from Rory Sloane, "Embrace the rain." It reminds me of, like, a company facing a sudden industry-wide disruption, right? Like a massive supply chain collapse.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
You can't just stand there and wish for sunny conditions to return. You have to figure out how to make that chaos your strategic advantage. The Crows really embraced this scrape.
What's fascinating here is how extreme weather acts as the ultimate great equalizer in any competitive environment. When you have a favored team, in this case the Cats, they usually rely on technical polish, precise execution, and controlled variables to win.
They want it neat and tidy.
Exactly. They want a clean, fast game. But when you introduce a torrential downpour, the physics of the game fundamentally change.
The ball literally becomes a bar of soap.
It does. The friction coefficient on the turf drops to practically zero. You cannot execute perfect high-skill maneuvers when the ground is giving way beneath your feet.
All right, your playbook goes out the window.
It neutralizes the favored team's technical advantage and reduces the entire contest from a game of finesse to a primal test of psychological grit. The team that wins in a downpour isn't the one with the best playbook. It's the team that accepts the misery fastest and adapts their biomechanics to the mud.
And the wild thing is, right in the middle of this chaotic, slippery slog, we actually get a moment of incredible historic precision.
A moment that temporarily transcended the weather, yeah.
Going into halftime, the Crows had actually built a bit of a buffer, leading 6.3 to 4.9. And during that second quarter, Tex Walker hit a massive milestone.
The 300th.
Yep. He kicked his 300th goal specifically at the Adelaide Oval. That brought his total career goals to 693 across 309 games. Cricket even poses the question in her blog, before he hangs up his boots, can he reach the magic 800-goal milestone?
Which is wild. Getting to 309 games in a sport that physically demanding is a testament to incredible structural durability.
It is, but I actually want to push back a bit on how we automatically celebrate these slow burn records, because the context cricket provides here is fascinating. Tex Walker took the ultimate club crown for career goals back in 2020. Do you know who he took it from?
Tony Modra.
The legendary Tony Modra. And Modra had racked up an astonishing 440 goals in just 118 games.
Wow.
That is an absolutely insane strike rate. We are talking almost 4 goals a game on average. Tex Walker is sitting at 693 goals, but it took him almost 3 times as many games to get there.
That's a stark contrast.
So I have to ask, is a blazing short-term peak, like Modra's, actually more impressive than a slow and steady decade of longevity from someone like Walker?
Man, that is the eternal debate in organizational strategy, isn't it? Do you value the explosive innovator who burns bright and fast, or the reliable anchor who grinds out consistent returns year after year?
Modra is like a drag racer.
No.
He burns up the tires, sets a blinding track record over a quarter mile, and creates this incredible spectacle.
Yeah, Modra represents the explosive mythos of the club. He is the pure, unadulterated excitement that draws fans in and creates a generational highlight reel. If we connect this to the bigger picture, organizations, and particularly sports franchises, actually need both of those archetypes to build a lasting legacy.
So you need the drag racer, but you also need the reliable engine.
Exactly. Tex Walker is the diesel locomotive. He doesn't go 200 miles an hour, but he pulls the weight of the entire franchise across a whole decade. He provides the structural integrity of the team over time.
And for the fans sitting in the rain, that matters.
It does. When you think about the fans sitting in the stands during a freezing downpour, tracking a milestone like Walker's 300th Oval goal serves a vital psychological function.
Because it's a distraction from the cold.
Partly, but it gives them a sense of historical continuity. It connects a miserable, wet Tuesday night to a grander, decade-long narrative. It reminds them that their presence in the rain actually matters.
Okay, so we just talked about the psychological anchor of history and milestones. But history is abstract, right? What happens when that mental weight is suddenly compounded by actual biological failure?
Yeah, the attrition.
Because as we move into the second half, that structural integrity you just mentioned gets pushed to the absolute limit. Cricket describes the atmosphere in the stadium perfectly. You could feel the emotions of the crowd writing every single disposal.
Oh, the tension must have been thick.
They are cheering every saved tackle, but small pockets of panic are starting to ripple through the stands. They are living and dying on bad umpire calls because the margin for error has totally vanished.
And that shrinking margin for error is a direct result of the physical attrition setting in.
And then the injury crisis hits. Callum Achi goes off hurt.
Which is a huge blow.
And then there is this tragic friendly fire incident that takes out the new kid, Hugo Hall-Kahan. Keep in mind, Hugo was playing his very first game after only 2 training sessions. Oh, that's just heartbreaking. Making your debut in a freezing downpour is a brutal welcome to the big leagues to begin with.
But getting taken out by your own teammate's stray knee, complete chaos. And because of these injuries, The crow's bench is reduced to just one healthy rotation.
One. Oh, man.
Just one. Put yourself in that coach's box for a second. You look at your bench, and you've got exactly one healthy rotation left. Every time a player takes a hit, you hold your breath because you have zero margin to rest anyone.
That is terrified territory for a coach.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like playing a survival video game on the hardest possible difficulty setting. Your health bar is blinking red, you have absolutely no extra lives left, and the final boss fight is only half over. The biomechanics of playing an entire half of elite football with only one rotation are basically a physiological nightmare. To understand why losing the bench is so catastrophic, you have to look at what happens inside the human body in a wet weather slog.
Because the mud changes everything.
Exactly. Because the ground is soft and slippery, every single step requires significantly more energy than it would on a dry field. The micro-adjustments required just to stay upright mean your leg muscles are burning through their glycogen stores at a vastly accelerated rate.
So they are running their engines in the red just to stand still.
Precisely. Normally, players cycle on and off the bench to flush lactic acid from their muscles and briefly lower their heart rates to a sustainable zone.
But with only one rotation.
With only one healthy rotation, that recovery window is completely gone. Lactic acid pools in the legs, making them feel like lead.
Wait, so you're saying their muscles aren't just tired, but their brains are actually losing the fuel needed to tell the muscles what to do?
That is the most critical point. When extreme physical fatigue sets in and glycogen is depleted, the body prioritizes keeping the vital organs functioning over keeping the brain's prefrontal cortex fully powered.
And the prefrontal cortex does what exactly in this context?
It's responsible for complex decision-making, spatial awareness, and strategic thinking. So as fuel drops, cognitive function is the first thing to deteriorate. Reaction times slow down. Tactical awareness evaporates.
So they're literally losing their ability to think about the game.
The intricate game plan they practiced all week goes completely out the window. The match transforms from a strategic contest into a raw, primitive battle of survival. The players aren't processing the overarching strategy anymore. They're just forcing their bodies to survive the next collision.
Which brings us to the defining moment of Cricket Fox's account. With the team biologically failing, completely out of fresh legs, and the tactical game plan effectively tossed in the mud, logic says you play defensively.
Right, you park the bus.
You conserve whatever tiny bit of energy you have left and try to run out the clock. But they had to rely on something entirely beyond logic. They had to rely on profound emotional override.
The human element.
Jordan Dawson essentially throws logic out the window here.
He took the burden of leadership and made it a physical reality.
Yeah. At three-quarter time, with the team facing this impossible physical deficit, Dawson doesn't ask to rest. He demands to be moved into the midfield.
Which is the hardest place to be.
He is willingly throwing himself into the absolute thickest, most punishing part of a brutal wet weather slog, and he forces his battered body through that punishment to kick 3 massive goals in the final term.
That is unbelievable willpower.
But cricket reviews the hidden layer to this performance. Dawson wasn't just fighting the Geelong Cats, and he wasn't just fighting the mud or the lactic acid buildup. He was carrying the memory of his brother in the back of his mind.
Which completely recontextualizes what we understand about athletic limits.
It really does, and the climax of this entire ordeal is incredibly cinematic. The final siren blows, that Geelong hoodoo, that miserable losing streak stretching back to 2021 is finally broken.
They actually pulled it off.
They did. Dawson just collapses on the turf in tears. Up in the stands, Cricket Fox is crying too, filled with pure relief and pride for a team that simply refused to stop moving.
That kind of release is, well, it's visceral.
So, what does this all mean? When we look at Jordan Dawson, does carrying immense personal grief onto the field usually crush a person under the pressure? Or does it somehow act as a kind of emotional rocket fuel?
This raises an important question, right, about the psychology of sublimation and how the brain can temporarily hijack the body's failure mechanisms.
Because usually, grief is debilitating.
In traditional sports psychology, athletes are often taught to compartmentalize. They are told to block out the noise of their personal lives so they can focus purely on technical execution. But what Dawson achieved requires the exact opposite approach.
He didn't lock the grief away, he funneled it directly into his legs.
He integrated it. When the physical body reaches total failure, when the glycogen is gone and the prefrontal cortex is shutting down non-essential functions, the normal biological response is to stop moving to prevent injury.
Your body literally says stop.
Right. The only way to override that survival mechanism is by introducing a psychological imperative that is stronger than physical pain. In psychology, this is related to sublimation taking in overwhelming emotional trauma, like grief, and channeling it into an intense physical output. By holding on to the memory of his brother, Dawson's brain likely triggered a massive sustained release of adrenaline and cortisol.
A chemical override.
Exactly. That endocrine response literally masked the pain of the lactic acid buildup, forcing his muscles to fire long past the point where they should have mathematically failed. He weaponized his grief to lead a broken team through the mud to victory. That isn't just athletic skill. That is a rare, transcendent manipulation of human physiology through emotional endurance.
It is genuinely breathtaking to unpack. I mean, we started this deep dive looking at a gloomy weather forecast and a heavily pessimistic baseline.
Everything was pointing to a loss.
The odds makers said they'd lose, history said they'd lose, the sky opened up to wash them away, and a brutal injury toll left their bench completely depleted. But through the lens of Cricket Fox's experience in the stands, we see how the human element completely shatters the clinical expectations of a spreadsheet.
Numbers can't measure heart.
Exactly. And for you listening, whether you follow football or not, the underlying mechanics of this match are universally applicable. Maybe you are managing a startup with depleted funding, or facing stacked odds in a creative project, or just navigating a massive storm in your own personal life.
The mud is universal.
It really is. The concept of embracing the rain, of stopping the wish for sunny conditions and instead adapting to the mud is step one. Step two is realizing that when your external resources are totally gone, leaning on your deepest personal whys, just like Jordan Dawson did, might trigger the exact emotional override you need to break your own hoodoos.
It is a phenomenal blueprint for surviving attrition. But there's a lingering shadow to this story that I think is crucial to examine.
Oh.
Yeah. When the final siren blew, Dawson's collapse onto the turf wasn't just physical exhaustion. It was a profound, overwhelming emotional release. We constantly celebrate the victory of the resilient leader.
Right, we put him on a pedestal.
We applaud the person who acts as the diesel locomotive, sublimating their own trauma to carry an entire community's emotional baggage across the finish line. But how often do we stop to consider the invisible, sometimes dangerous psychological tax exacted on those individuals?
Wow, that's a great point.
Adrenaline masks the pain in the moment, but the bill always comes due. What happens to the leader's internal landscape after the tears dry and the crowd goes home?
That is a heavy, incredibly important thought to leave on. The storm might pass, but the ground stays muddy long after the victory lap. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the raw reality hiding behind the box score today. Keep embracing the rain, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
Football is always more than just a game, and nights like that prove it. Thanks for spending some time with me today sharing the passion. Have a fantastic week, stay safe, and we'll talk again soon on the next episode.